Good evening and welcome to tonight's Rules Committee meeting for May 24th, 2023. We have three items on the agenda. The first one is the approval of January 17th, 2023 Rules Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and properly second.
Call for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Second item is the matter of establishing nonpartisan elections for the positions of Elyria City Council, referred by Council Member Lippian, Ward 1. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everybody, for meeting to discuss this. I want to start with a story of how we got here. There's a resident in Eastern Heights who, alas, is no longer whinnying with us, and his name was Roger Anderson. He's a veteran and a very good fellow, and he passed away just a little over a year ago. And one of the things he told me he deeply wanted to see City Council discuss was these two matters today, because he strongly felt that there's a lot of partisanship in our country, and that for Elyria to thrive and grow and develop, it needed new blood. And I won't say that it was a promise he made before he died, but I will tell me he earnestly encouraged me to ask these questions and get these conversations going. And I didn't want to do it right out the chute, but it's a good time, so I wanted to bring it to your attention. Now, that said, I suspend judgment on the matter itself. I'm not entirely committed to either of these solutions. Every solution, as we know, is a trade-off. There's going to be something good sacrificed for something bad, but there'll also be something bad sacrificed for something good. There'll always be a trade-off. I suppose before we discuss the specifics of, the first item is nonpartisan elections. Before we discuss the specifics, it would be good to know if we have understanding in general about whether there's some consensus on the matter itself. So what I'm curious to know are what other council people, the mayor, other people think about the matter in general of nonpartisan elections, whether it's something that tickles your fancy, and whether it's something that we could even strike some kind of consensus on. So that's how I wanted to get the ball rolling.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. My initial thought was that I have been going to city council meetings since the 1970s, out of high school. I see one of my high school schoolmates here tonight. And I would go downtown to the old city hall, and I'd watch the council members around a table. And quite frankly, I couldn't determine which party the members belonged to. I do realize there were some from each party, but it just seems like at that time what struck me was they were all working together just to solve problems. I felt that that's what I liked. And I thought maybe someday, when I'm old and gray, that I might run for a council seat. Just because I thought the back and forth, the debate was always respectful. People listened to each other's ideas. And that's the way it really should be. I think local government can really set a good example and provide the services for its citizens. Now, whether that ties into our town being partisan or non, I think this is the place to at least have the discussion and bring it up and have some feedback back and forth and see where everybody stands. But it would be a big move to change things, change the way it is now. I don't really see there being any problems now. Whether somebody has an R next to their name or has a D next to their name or an I or even a different letter. The idea is that we just need to work together to solve the issues at hand and respect one another as we do that. So I'll just start out with that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't expected to speak on this, so I don't have any prepared remarks. But my reaction to the topic is multifaceted. So one thought I thought about on my way down here, just happened to randomly see the picture of the first woman that was elected as mayor of the city of Elyria, and she was a Republican. This was the first woman. And I thought about my journey and me being the first African American elected as an independent. And it just started me thinking about this party dynamic. And when we think about what are the harms or what are the benefits, you know, I think about so often as a country, but definitely I see it locally, we're basing judgment based on a letter next to someone's name and not necessarily the character that they operate with or the beliefs that they have from a policy standpoint. I know I've felt during my time here in office that if I had a D next to my name, there would be a much different treatment towards the ideas that I present, the policies I present. It's been interesting to see some of the, you know, even some of the party comments that have been made in terms of not necessarily saying, here's the policy disagreements I have with Mayor Whitfield, here's the policy direction I disagree with them on. It's, no, there should be a Democrat in the mayor's seat. And to me, that is a backwards way of thinking. And I think that it should be addressed. I think we should look at how it could benefit. People would have to run on their own merits, on their own credibility, on their own experiences, not just running up on a party label. So I think it would enhance our democracy on both sides. Yeah, I think it make people really have to stand for something.
Thank you. So I do have a comment. Based on what you just said, I don't know where this is going to go. But I've been on council for 10 years, and I have never seen an issue decided one way or another because of a letter. You know, we've had conversations. I didn't vote against Mr. Baird because he was a Republican. I didn't vote against Mr. Craig because he was an independent. I can't go beyond that because there was no other there. I did witness some conversations and voting when Mr. Gibbs was here. And I never got the sense or had the feeling that anybody voted a certain way because of who they were voting against. And that's what I have to say on that. Anybody else? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I have been on council some 16 years now. Gary Gibbs sat in this seat. Jack Baird sat in this seat. I've worked with Mark Craig, and we all got along. It didn't matter if you were Democrat, it didn't matter if you were Republican. We were all working towards the good of the city, and I never felt anything different. Did we have our disagreements? Of course we did. We're all human. But having said that, we worked together for the good of the city. And it didn't matter to me that Jack was a Republican, or it doesn't matter that Mickey's a Republican. It didn't matter that Gary Gibbs was a Republican. We worked together. And that's what council's about. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Corbin?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have to echo exactly what they have said. And although I am in the minority, there has been everybody has worked together for the city of Elyria. I do have a question about both of these, though. I'm just wondering if we can modify the charter, or if this is something that should be brought to the public. Are these issues something that the citizens of Elyria should be a part of the decision-making process?
So, Mr. Corbin, if I understand this correctly, if we were to proceed with either one of these, it would have to go to the ballot and become part of the charter amendment. Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not on the committee, but if you let me speak for a few minutes. I think I just had a conversation with Mr. Corman a few weeks back, and we were talking about this, and I said, you know, I really don't know which party you are. And because I wasn't really paying that much attention. And same way with Mr. Lippian, and I thought at one time he was a libertarian. And so I'm like, well, and then I found out is he's a independent. So I guess all this time has gone by, and that designation didn't mean anything to me. You know, I still sit here and talk the same way I do with everybody. Just like when we go and somebody's got an issue, the first question isn't, are you a Democrat? Oh, good, I can answer your question. Or are you a Republican? Well, you're going to have to speak to someone else. So I don't think in this little government, and I think what Tom said is maybe our little government here could teach other people a lesson that maybe you do have a strong conviction on how you grew up as a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian or, I always get independent, but whatever these are, you can have that conviction, but when you sit here at the table, I think we're still collectively taking good ideas from everybody. I don't know if I would want to change and the term limits things. Well, we won't get it. We'll just discuss this at this point. So thank you.
Mr. Callahan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I kind of respectfully disagree with Mayor Whitfield. I feel that there have been some issues that council generally has disagreed with the mayor on, but I believe they were really respectful disagreements. It had no intention, at least on my part, and I know many others, because of a party affiliation. I don't think that's true. I think it was just a philosophy difference. I used to, there were a couple of terms where Mr. Gibbs sat next to me. And if you really wanted to ever see somebody just disagree, because he told me once, I said, why'd you vote no on that? And he looked at me and says, because that's my job. You know, but he didn't do it in a mean-spirited way. He kind of did it with a smile on his face. And okay, I says, I get it. You know, he wanted to be the dissenting voice. That was his choice. I like Gary. We went out to lunch many times, and I run into him every now and then. In regards to going to a ballot at a date in the future, I think we would really have to spell it out and get the wording properly, I guess with the law director's office encouraging that and writing some type of legislation. But I also think we got to really stop and think, talk this out, have maybe a few more meetings, because this is something that will affect the city for decades to come, if there's going to be a change. Obviously, the way to do it, it's a charter issue. You do take that to the ballot, but you want to have the wording right, and you got to really stop and think. I'm just not sure where we are on it. I mean, we're just all hearing about it now. We can stop and think. But I do want to mention one other thing. Through the years of running for office, I know I've knocked on thousands of doors. There's only been 4 people in the city that asked me what party I was in. Only 4. And out of the 4, when I gave them the response, only 1 looked at me and he says, well, I just can't vote for you. And we shook hands and I walked away. Now there was another one, I won't even say what happened there, but his dog didn't like me. So he said his dog wasn't gonna, he said his dog had an R next to his name. So, but he was just trying to be funny. But anyway, like I said, this is the place to have the discussion, run things by everybody, and give it some time, and we'll see where we go. Thank you.
Mr. Bruning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, confirm a couple of things that have been said. Absolutely, this would be a charter amendment. So if this passes through this committee, goes to full council, and council recommends the charter change, it goes to the ballot. Okay. The matter of the timing on that, there are rules that the Board of Election has, actually statutes that govern the timing of those things. So if it looks like this is gaining some momentum, we're going to have to, seriously discuss when and how those issues would go to the ballot. As far as the process beyond that, at this point, this is nothing more than, an idea, a proposal that we would need some guidance on from the committee and from council as to how you want, if there is an appetite to do this, how you would want that to look, how you would want it to take shape. There are multiple different ways to conduct nonpartisan elections. And because we are a charter city, we're self-governing, we can sort of navigate through that, the best way that this council determines they want to put to the voters. But again, there being multiple ways. If there's an appetite to do that, we can look into it further. We can have these further discussions and further, Rules Committee meetings before the final, ballot language would be crafted. On the other hand, if there isn't that much of an appetite for doing that, then, we can just halt those discussions before we get too deep into that process. It can get complex, but I don't think we're at the point of complexity yet until we hear from you guys that that's what you want to do.
Mr. Lippan?
For you, Mr. Chair, exactly. Mr. Brunig, that's correct. Today is just for discussion. We would never want to rush a thing like this. We got plenty of time before the election to talk about it. I think that's healthy, and I'm glad to hear from my council colleagues that they think this is the place to have the discussion. Mr. Callahan, thank you for saying that you think it's a good discussion to have. I think so, because people are definitely talking about it. And I'm encouraged by what I hear from a lot of my fellow colleagues about partisanship never seemed to have mattered to me. I don't think anybody in this committee would say that we don't get along. We certainly do. We see each other in the community. We have Rita's ice cream together for openings, and we have our disagreements, and they're robust disagreements, but we conduct them civilly and respectfully and professionally, and we always should. But I'm encouraged to hear that many don't think partisanship should matter. Many don't think people in Elyria do think it matters. Then the question I want to bounce out to my colleagues is then why would we keep the letters? If they don't matter, why are we going to keep the letters?
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess I'm curious as to why we're even having this conversation. It has never been an issue on this council before. Now, all of a sudden, it's an issue that I don't think is an issue. When you go to the Board of Election and you pull your petition, you have to declare what party you want to run for. You don't get to say, well, I'm not going to decide. I don't want to be any party. You don't get to run then. So we have to declare a party. So how would that even work? Mr. Brunig, through you, how would that even work?
Well, I think that's not entirely accurate. I think you can, in a primary you have to declare, but not for a general election.
In the primary,
Independents do not have to declare a party. Independents have until the day before a primary election to file their petitions and file as nonpartisan. So, that's not entirely accurate. But how would that work? Again, that's a completely separate question. Again, there are various ways you can run nonpartisan elections. Some have, a full field for a primary, and, it's not really a primary in the sense of partisanship, but it's a primary as, a precursor to a runoff vote for the general election. I mean, that's one way to do it. That's not how they all do it. And I guess the other thing that I would want you guys to consider, I have no opinion on this matter, but does nonpartisan really mean nonpartisan? I mean, as an attorney, I look at judicial races in particular. For years, those have been quote unquote nonpartisan. Do any of us harbor any illusions that they're truly nonpartisan, that the folks running for those positions are not members of parties? I mean, to the point where the legislature has actually changed the rules on some of that, the appeals courts and higher up at this point. That's just a discussion point. Again, I have no opinion on the matter. I just, as long as we're discussing this, I think it's appropriate to look at the various ways around the state that these, smaller elections are conducted.
Thank you. So Mr. Tillett couldn't be here tonight, but he sent me an email and wanted this read in to have it in the minutes. So this would be on this issue here, declaring a party. Declaring an affiliation with an organized party has been done around the world for centuries. To opt out of this practice deems a candidate of hiding something from the taxpayers. To hide something isn't a good practice, especially for local elections. We're representatives of voters' ideals, and to cover this up is unprofessional. It goes on about the term limits, since I'm reading this now. Every 2 years for council and 4 years for mayor, the voters get a choice. Term limits take away that choice from the voters, which again is a poor practice to limit the voters' anti-democracy. And this is again from Phil Tillett, Councilman. Mr. Lipman.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, that was an ardent defense of partisanship. I mean, we have to respect that he's not hiding that he's a partisan, but also nonpartisans aren't hiding that they're not partisan. They say neither A nor B, see. There is another option. There is a way out of the duopoly. That's one thing that I've enjoyed from my time on city council and even watching before I came on city council, is that the mayor and I do not subscribe to partisan labels. And that is the benefit, is that somebody gets to look at you as a person before they see the alphabet letter. So on the contrary, I would say that there's less to hide because there's no letter to protect you. People really have to choose you, the person, not you, the letter. And that is perhaps the greatest honor that I wish everybody on this committee could have, is being voted for just because of you being selected, not because people just clicked a letter. Because when you go into that ballot box and you look at the screen, you see the letter, but if the letter isn't there, you have to pick the person. And a lot of people will suspend judgment because they don't know the person, and I actually think that's more healthy, especially at the local level. So what I'm hearing is a lot of my colleagues seem to feel, and a consensus opinion is that party labels shouldn't matter. So again, I bounce it out to my colleagues. If the party labels don't matter, why would we defend keeping the party labels at the local elections? I mean, Oberlin doesn't do it. I don't think anybody would say that Oberlin is a bastion of people hiding their true ideology. Oberlin certainly is not. And there's many other examples throughout the county. You know, we have a resident here from Avon Lake, and he could tell us about that, or soon to be former resident of Avon Lake. So I would just be interested to hear what people think about why keep the letter if it doesn't matter.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I'm not on this committee, and I strongly disagree with what Mr. Lippy is saying. I agree with everyone saying that, you know, we're here at the bottom level of government here, and we're trying to work all together for the betterment of our city and our community and our residents. I've been on council for quite a few years, and I would think that the reason why I am being elected is because I'm good at what I do. I work hard for our committee, for the committees, for my residents, and it's not because I have a D behind my name. And I think that's what you're insinuating, is that Vic Stewart's been on council and he's a Democrat, so we should just continue to vote for him. I think it's proven that over the years that I've been on this council that the people trust the decision making that I'm making and for the betterment of our community. And I will disagree with the mayor in respect to that, his comments in regards to he's struggled because he didn't have a D behind his name. I disagree with Mayor Grace. I disagreed with Mayor Brenda. So, you know, there's no here in regards to saying that singling you out because we're not getting things done here or your policies or procedures are moving forward. It's not simply the case. So I would not support what's being proposed here in this first item. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. So a couple things in response to President Stewart. One, I will say that you are an exception in terms of the typical politician, in terms of you have built a reputation for yourself, and part of it is the legacy that from your father, but that you've also carried on and been, in my opinion, a great council person. And I've, you know, shared in the past, I've enjoyed working with you, and I think the disagreements we've had, you've handled them respectfully, and you've handled them in a way that I think is a fair way. You've done it fairly. But I stand by my notion that I understand there's always going to be a tension between the executive branch and the legislative branch. We see that federally, statewide, so I understand that. But I, like many of you, are privy to some of the conversations that happen outside of this room when it comes to the party aspect of me being in this seat, and how I've been treated because of that, and some of the things that the people around me have been treated because of that dynamic, and have been explicitly told this is why we have a problem with the mayor, is because he's not a Democrat. And so I'm not going to be, you know, convinced or gaslit and not acting like I didn't hear those things. And then when you have the leader of the party in the city make a comment of, you know, well, what do you hope to see different that the mayor's not doing? What do you hope to see? It's like, no, that's a Democrat seat. And so that type of thinking, that's not good for our city. It shouldn't be about this is a Democrat seat. This should be about who's the best representative, who can be a great executive for the city, who's got the right vision for the city. It shouldn't be based upon the mindset of this is a Democrat seat. And so it's that mentality that I think we need to try to address as a city. And so I hear you, but I think we all know the truth around how the party dynamic plays out. And I agree with the natural tension. I think as I mentioned before, I think you've handled it very respectfully. But to act like that dynamic's not there would just not be true.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for conducting a good discussion today. I would just say, first of all, I have to respond to Mr. Stewart, and none of us should be taking this personally when I'm speaking, and as we all are, broadly about nonpartisan elections and partisanship. Nobody should take that to mean that therefore it's a personal attack on you. So we need to dispense with that, I think, quickly. What we're not doing is we're not trying to put a magnifying glass on any one individual person. What we are acknowledging is that party will play a factor. What factor it plays, we all agree should not be significant. So therefore, why retain the letter? Some people say partisanship does encourage tribalism. It's no question that sometimes it does. So would we want to take the risk of encouraging tribalism instead of adopt the reward of finding a way to achieve, like I've said, new blood in our city? So I guess that's the question nobody's answered yet, is if the partisanship doesn't matter, why are we defending the letter? I still haven't heard a good answer to that question. And hopefully I will, and then we can move on to the next portion of the meeting, because we do have to press on with other important matters tonight.
So I'm going to ask Mr. Lippian a direct question, because it's not personal or anything like that. Would you step away from the Libertarian Party that you're co-chair of?
Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, in Robert's Rules of Order, whenever you address somebody, you don't address them personally, you address them as councilman. I presume that was a mistake of yours. So at any rate, also, it's important to mention that we shouldn't be questioning motives here. When I heard Phil Tillet's letter, I heard a questioning of a motive. It enables people to hide. Under Robert's Rules of Order, we don't question the motives of people. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to just discuss this as partisanship versus nonpartisanship. So what I hope we're able to do is answer the question to why we are not going to dispense with the labels if the labels don't matter. So I'm going to say that I don't want to concentrate on the labels today. I don't want to concentrate on specific parties. I think I started this off by saying that I wanted to keep out of the specifics of the parties, and I wanted to just talk about the general status of, if letters don't matter, why do we keep them? So that's the question that I'd like an answer to.
Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Chairman, I just want to, from my perspective on this, is just, I'm not in this kind of naive world to think that all parties are going to dissolve for the country. I'm not in that. I think that people will always have their personal party preference in terms of where they lean politically. I'm just saying in support of local elections, that in particular, these sort of issues that we address on a local level, that I think the party has not shown to be of consistent value. But I get the real point I'm trying to make in all of this is that people can have their own personal party view, and I don't think that should be. I think that's something for the voters to ask folks when they come. Hey, I'm Andrew Lippian, I'd like to be city council. They could ask, well, what's your party affiliation, and if that matters to them. But if that doesn't matter to them, they may say, well, what are you going to do for me as a council person? But I don't think we should just be having a mindset we're trying to strip people of their party. I would expect everybody to maintain some sort of connection to a party.
Thank you. Anybody have a question or comment? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair, I'm not on this committee. I'd just like to make a comment. I've been on council for a while myself, over 10 years, and to this discussion, to me, it's our character. It's not about a letter. It's about our character and what we can do for our citizens, and not so focused on a letter behind our name. And so in saying that, I would not agree to being nonpartisan.
Anybody else have any comments or questions on this issue? Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I would then ask my esteemed councilwoman who sits next to me and whom I have enjoyed almost 2 years on council with to then answer the question, why? If character matters more than party, at the local level especially, why do we retain the letter?
Through you, Chair,
Mr. Davis?
for the same reason he chose to be what he wanted to be. So if he chose to be libertarian, and then you go and register as an independent, why didn't you choose nothing? So if you had a choice, what would you choose? So I keep the letter behind my name because that's my choice.
Philippian?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I've brought this up in council before, and I guess it bears repeating. I didn't have that choice. When I went to the Board of Elections, it was explained to me that the Libertarians had lost ballot access because in the duopoly that we live in, which is a partisan duopoly, if you do not have a certain amount of votes in a presidential election, or if you do not have an obscene number of signatures, then your party doesn't get a primary. Therefore, you cannot run as anything than a libertarian. I'm sorry, strike that. You cannot run as anything then, an independent. So I didn't have that choice. So that wasn't given to me. But I still have not heard a really good answer to the question, if the parties don't matter, why retain the label? And I don't think I'm going to. And I think the meeting needs to continue. So perhaps we'll get a good answer to that later on, but maybe we can get to the next item on the agenda. Just a thought.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I am a Democrat. I always have been. I will always be, because I believe in the Democrat values. Those are important to me. But when I go to my residents, I don't say, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? They're residents of the city of Elyria. That's who I represent, not a Democrat, not a Republican, but the residents. And I think I keep winning elections because I do a good job. I work hard for my residents. I fight hard for the 6th Ward. I beg for money for the 6th Ward. I believe in what I do. That's why I do it. I believe in what I do. But I am a Democrat because I believe in the democratic values. So I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oswald?
Not on the committee, but thank you, Mrs. Sarah. I guess I have to agree with Ms. Mitchell. And also, I think when you do have a designation, somebody has grown up their whole life with their convictions on what the Democrats supposedly believe. The Republicans maybe grow up with the convictions of what they believe. So when you have those two coming to the table, you have two maybe totally different ideas. But because we sit here in this council meeting, we're not looking at that person because that's just a Republican conviction that they have. But you get a good discussion. You're not preaching to the choir. So it's always good. I go to these different offices and I ask, I want to do this. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. And they'll say, well, you don't really need to do this. And I'm like, you know what, that's good, because I'm asking a lot of people a lot of different things, but I'm just not asking my wife that's going to say everything I do is perfect. So you get different comments, and I think because a person's, whatever party they are or conviction, whether it's an independent or if it would be a libertarian or a Republican or Democrat, I think that designation maybe just shows that this is a conviction that they've grown up with. And I don't think they ram it down anybody's throat when we're here in the meetings. And yeah, I don't think that, for me, and personally, it doesn't make a difference. But I think you do need that letter D or letter R, you know, to say that maybe this is what they're believing in their life. So thank you.
Thank you, and I think that some of this is going to get repeated in the next issue, so I'd like to move on with that, if that's okay. So we will table this to a date to be determined. The next issue is a matter of fixing term limits upon the positions of city council and the mayor, referred by Councilman Member Lippian. Philippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So germinal to the first issue is the issue of terms. Again, I repeat, I suspend judgment on the matter. I will not rush to judgment and say that I absolutely do not support this or that I absolutely do support it. I'm just interested to see what people think about term limits in general. I've heard a lot of people say they've been on council for 16 years, for 10 years. What is too long? And at what point do we not open up gates for other leaders to manifest and keep a good cycling of new blood in the city?
Thank you. Mr. Callahan?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I did a little bit of research in regards to this topic of council members, and what I found was in 2005, there are no sitting council members that were here in 2005. In fact, if you can go back 10 years to 2013, there's only 4 members that are serving on council that were here 10 years ago. If you go back 5 years, there was only 5 of us who are still here. And in fact, the last election was very unique, as it brought in 3 new members, each one with a different label. Thought that was very unique. Going forward, since 2005, we have had 26 seat changes on city council, 33 different members, and 37 different positions. Now, let me explain that. There were 4 members that switched from a at-large seat to go to a ward seat or vice versa. Mr. Tanner was one of them. Mr. Tollett was one of them. Herman Larkins was one of them. And Jack Baird was one of them. I guess what I'm saying is the citizens of Elyria vote for who they feel is going to do the job. We've had representatives on this board from both parties. 3 independents since I've been here. I should have wrote down the number of Republicans, but there have been quite a few of them too, and getting reelected. Perfect example is Mr. Baird. Now, in my opinion, to have a good city council, you do have to have some veteran experience, because there's a lot of decisions that are going to be made that not just are going to affect us tomorrow and next week, it's going to affect us for a long time to come. And you get that with experience. I know my first couple of terms, I listened a lot. I actually still listen quite a bit. And I think Jack Baird, another fine member who I respect, former member, he told me one time, Tom, listen, that's how you're going to learn. And that's why God gave you 2 ears and only 1 mouth. Good old Jack. I still stay in contact with Jack. We talk about a few things. And he encourages me, and he's encouraging others as well. So I guess the natural progression of the turnover that we've had on this council over 18 years, in every term, it almost seems like there's new people coming on. There's new blood. And there's something to say for new blood, too. New blood and energy. That's well. So it's the balance. It's balancing the experience with the new blood, just like the fire department. You have older firefighters that do certain jobs. The new guys do the grunt work because they're young and they can do that. So I just wanted to add those comments because this is the discussion. We're having another good discussion. And I'd like to hear some other people's thoughts on it. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on this issue? Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't agree with you more, Councilman Callahan. I have genuinely enjoyed and continue to genuinely enjoy serving with you. And what might not be widely known is that the minority and majority leaders actually enjoy a very good relationship, and sometimes before council meetings, you know, we'll get the occasional breakfast and discuss the zeitgeist and the goings-on. And I've always found you to be a man of distinction. So just Just wanted to throw that over there. I also get along very well with Maurice Corbin III, councilman, even though we are of different, he's a partisan and I, and it's okay. And he's a different party, but that's never prevented us from getting along. So again, I just want to dispense with the concept that the party labels are important, which it seems that we all agree on. So, but what I wanted to say about term limits is, in a hypothetical situation, we all have the same election, the same year. In a nightmare scenario, if we agree that experience is important, what if all of council changed hands in one election? There was nobody left here that had that experience. There was no, as you would, seasoned statesman to mentor the others. So would anybody be interested in staggering elections, perhaps changing term limits, perhaps term limits for at-large council people would be staggered in a different year, and ward council people would have a different election year. That way, that nightmare scenario would never play out. In some communities, at-large council people serve longer terms. So that's something we want to consider as well.
So if I understand, that wouldn't necessarily be a term limit, that would be term length.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be related to term limits because you could also put a cap on it, but term lengths should definitely apply under the family of terms.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this issue? Mr. Oswald?
Through Mr. Chair, again, I'm not on this committee, and maybe the mayor agrees with me on this one, but I'm going on, I think, my 4th year, okay? And just like you have an agenda of things you want to get done. Well, I do too. And you know what? I'm finding out that sometimes it don't happen as fast as we want it to, So you want to be reelected for what reason? You want to finish that agenda you started. Well, I've got a few of those agendas also that we've been working. Some we're getting taken care of, and some just take so much time. And for somebody to tell me I could only be a council person for this long, I'm like, no, I got to keep doing this. I want to make sure this is gone through. I want to make this thing happen. And sometimes you don't get that choice and you're gone. So the part about getting somebody out just because of a certain amount of years and you're a seasoned person, and you should be in there, the people will see that. They have an out if they want to get us. And same thing, I said that, why should I have a 2-year term? Because I'm just getting rolling, and that's never been able to be changed because people say that they want to be able to get you out if you're not doing a good job. Well, they can't always. They have that option. But for us to be up there we want to finish what we started, right? Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I agree.
Anybody else have any comments or questions on this issue? Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a comment on this issue, but just this whole process. What are we doing? Are we going to vote tonight? Are we tabling this? Is this for discussion only? We're sitting here just chit-chatting? What are we doing?
This is for discussion only, and both items, I believe, will be tabled to a date to be determined. Mr. Lipman?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess Councilman Mitchell is anticipating my last question, which is, before I came on council, I got the chance to watch the last council meeting of 2021. And one of the things I heard discussed was compromise should not be a dirty word. And I really liked that. So we've been discussing 2 issues tonight at some length and of some importance. They are varied and general at the moment. So before we dig into the specifics, what I'm wondering is as we table this item, because again, it's only for discussion today, is there some manifestation or some middle point between these 2 things brought to the council committee to discuss tonight that we could consider a compromise that I could come back with and serve up to the committee for consideration? Is there any appetite for compromise?
Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer your question, I believe right now what we're doing is fine, and I don't see where we need more discussion on that. Leave it the way it is, but that's my comment, and that's what I believe. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment?
I would agree as well. I would, on both of these items, I stated my piece in the first item and on the second item. It comes down to voters voting for the person who is doing the job who is representing all cities, the whole city, even in their wards, but overall, Ms. Mitchell, Ms. Davis, Ms. Simmons, they're all representing their wards, but equally, it's the city. They all want the city to thrive. So I would not be in favor of any of these items. If people don't feel that I'm not doing the job, Brian, there's their voice. They can vote me out.
Mr. Callahan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Since I've been here, same time Mr. Stewart came on, City Council, there have been a lot of forfeits. And I mean, there have been a lot of times where the opposition party put no candidate to run, or minimal candidates. I see that's changing, and that's good for democracy, that there's more people running. It's going to give people choices. I think that's good. But through the years, people have to decide whether they want to serve their city, you know, and make that decision. Some people may not. Maybe it's not their cup of tea. But if they step into it, heck, when we all started the first time, we were all green. We had to go out and work very hard to introduce ourselves to people. And but I see that that seems to be changing, and I think that's good. That there's more people, there's more competitive races, and because we all have to be accountable for what we've done and what we're going to do. So, thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions on this issue? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair. Like I said before, I've been here a few years and had the opportunity to run every 2 years, which I term that being bad because as soon as you start a project, you worried about running again. So if I had a choice, you'd be running every 4 years. So you could do something and not have to worry so much. But far as making it a term limit, I work hard for this city, and it shows with the people's vote. So I wouldn't dare, when I decide, if I'm not voted out, I would step down when I know that it's time. You know when it's time to give up. If you don't think you qualified or you termed out, you step down. But I am here to serve the people, to serve the second ward or any other ward that needs me to help. And I'm working on a project that I want to see through before I am put out. Thank you.
So in the interest of time, if there's no other new information to come forward, I would recommend tabling this for the time being and adjourn the meeting. Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have one last comment. And the last comment is what I've heard from a couple of my colleagues to me sounds tantamount to, well, we've always done it this way. Okay? Well, when I've gone to organizations and people have told me that, I say, well, that might be part of the problem. We've always done it this way. I don't think it's too late to find some creative solutions that we might find compromise on. I saw when Councilwoman Davis was talking about lengthening the terms, I saw a lot of my colleagues nodding their heads. Maybe that's an avenue for some compromise. But I think this has been a very good discussion. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take what I've heard from this discussion today, and I am going to quilt together a compromise because I still do believe that compromise might be possible. And I'm going to bring it back to the committee at a later date. And thank you, everybody, for a professional conversation.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Motion made, properly seconded. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess before we start the special committee meeting.